thank you very much for joining me for a coffee with the editor. Momentous step in the South African railway environment, or history, should I say. The open slots, access for private operators. You're a big player in this market. What are your thoughts?
Thanks, Philippa, for this session. From Grindrod perspective, we think it's an excellent start. It's a good start that Transnet are at least demonstrating to the public that they are serious about bringing on the private sector participation in their rail network. We do appreciate that it doesn't cover all the corridors, but as a start, I think it's hitting the right button. We know the challenges that are currently in Durban in terms of link to the hinterland, and also the constraints that is faced by TFR in terms of their rolling stocks. So it's a good start for them to bring the private sector and assess that when they actually go full on this, what would be the potential participation by the private sector to make this work. So we welcome the opportunity, and we welcome the step that has been taken by Transnet.
And you're obviously going to participate, although your rolling stock, I think, is all diesel and not electric.
That is correct, Philippa. So there are some challenges and some nuances as we go through the process, but the decision we've taken as Grindrod is that we will participate, and where we hit these challenges, we will engage Transnet. If there are solutions that we can put in place, for instance, on our diesel locals in terms of how they can navigate in the long tunnels where this seems to be a technical challenge, we'll present those options to Transnet, and who knows, if they're agreeable to them as a proper solution, then it might work. But when it doesn't, we would have given it a shot as Grindrod, and we would hope that there will be someone with electric locomotives to come in and assist. Or there may be some other ways to explore what more can we do to alleviate or to accelerate the container evacuation out of Durban. Of course, these slots are not restricted to Joburg, Durban, or Durban-Joburg. There are also other routes that are covered within this initial phase. So there's an opportunity to also look at those, and I think those ones would accommodate the diesel locomotives.
Do you have any major concerns with the process as you're going forward? I mean, I've heard some news from the industry in terms of things like the bargaining council or the grandfather rights. There's a whole long list, and I don't want to go into all of them, but I mean, is there anything of particular concern for you?
Yeah, look, we do appreciate that there are concerns and there are challenges with this initial pilot, as they call it. And we take it as such, a pilot, and out of this, challenges will come up, and the question is how those challenges are being addressed to ensure or to encourage the successful participation by the private sector. The one that has been discussed at length is, of course, the diesel locomotive restriction, as I've indicated earlier, on the NEDCO line, which affects us directly in terms of the fleet that you currently have as Grindrod. The second one is the duration of the pilot. Now, a pilot is not meant to last forever or to be too long, but where it becomes a bit of a challenge, perhaps more for other potential private participants, and maybe to an extent to us in as far as NEDCO line is concerned, is that the 2-year period may be limited in terms of investing on the rolling stock and have the ability to realize your payback as well as the returns. And the numbers have been thrown around in the media in terms of what those potential investment values would look like. So our belief, though, is that if you are part of the process, we'll be able to outline those challenges to Transnet to the extent that they affect us. And if there are solutions around it, hopefully we'll then be able to progress this. And if they aren't, then they may become a challenge, and I'm not sure how then those would be resolved to the extent that they would require us to put an investment. So that's one of the issues that have come up. I think the other one was a footstoots clause, but I think this was addressed correctly in the information sharing, in that the potential private participants will be allowed to do an assessment of what they are getting themselves into before they sign up. So that to me is positive, because we will know exactly what we're getting into. And of course, the thorny one is around the labor bargaining participation by the potential rail operators. We understand that Transnet possibly had to put that in a clause if they were to garner support from the labor sector in this initiative, because without the support of the labor, I'm not sure how they would have this progressing in a meaningful way. So we understand that part. The question is, how do we then as a business make sure that we see this in a positive light, and we have the labor sector as partners with us going into this as a solution. I think if we take a confrontational approach from the onset, then it will make this project difficult to execute. So I think it's a question of how we approach it, and hopefully we've got an alignment with the labor sector in terms of all wanting to ensure that this project is a success going forward. So those are the sort of issues that are of concern to us, but I think the way to address them and make this project work is to be in it and then engage Transnet to make sure that there is some way of having these resolved somewhat.
So talking about success, for you as a business and for Grindrod, what do you think would be the ideal highlight points here from a success perspective?
Well, this project specifically is a pilot. So for us, as Grindrod, it definitely would require an investment on the wagons that carried containers. But in terms of the locomotives, assuming they can work throughout these corridors that have been indicated, it would be a good start. But the ideal scenario for us is where this is now being opened up to the other corridors. And as you know, we move industrial minerals or mining minerals, as it may be the case. And the best scenario for us, or the key success factor, is our ability to deploy the rolling stock in the corridors in which we operate. And the active one that would suit our current rolling stock or locomotives specifically would be the Maputo corridor, where we can then use our rolling stock, our relationship with CFM, and our relationship with TFR for that matter, to flow the cargo into our terminal, both Maputo terminal as well as our Matola terminal. That would be a huge success factor for us, and I also think for the country in general, because we are then in a position to provide an entire value chain solution to our customers, and in a meaningful way move the cargo, which South Africa needs to see moving. I think the other one that has come through that you may have seen, and it's a difficult one, and I think Transnet, TFR in particular, did respond to it during the information sharing, was the policy versus the decision by Transnet to run the pilot. I think there's a view out in the market that what TFR are doing is contradicting the policy that whether it's been approved or being approved currently. And I think the response to Transnet, we feel it was correct, but we're not placed to really argue whether they what they're doing is against the policy or not. Their response to that statement was that the sale of slot means that the private operators are operating under the license conditions that belong to TFR. So it's not a scenario where Transnet is issuing a separate license to the private operators. So you are renting a slot, but all the conditions of the license applicable to TFR will equally apply to the operator. So in other words, you're operating on a license that belongs to TFR. And therefore, our view is that perhaps that may not necessarily be in conflict with the policy. There are some other items that have been quoted along on this issue, and we feel that it is up to Transnet really to make a call whether they're in conflict with that policy or not. Ours is to accept that they would have done the groundwork and they are comfortable that the pilot is in line and is not necessarily in breach with any policy that's currently in place.
That's well put, because there's so many different, there are different views on this. There are views that it has been released without any consideration to the rail policy, although during the media briefing session, which took place before the information session, Portia Darby did say it is in line with the policy. It might not be 100% aligned. You know, it's just been approved by cabinet. It's waiting to be gazetted. I don't think I've seen the gazetted document yet. So, Xolani, I wish you luck.
Thank you. We need it.
And thank you very much for taking the time to have a coffee with the editor.